Well, my name's Stewart Rogers. I am editor-in-chief at a publication called Badass Times, which is a publication and a social network for digital nomads. I am formerly of VentureBeat, and I used to run VentureBeat's research arm, which was called VB Insight. I am also managing editor at Grit Daily, which is a technology news publication. And I'm a contributor at Hacker Noon, which of course is another tech news publication. I also happen to run a number of startups, including Badass Empire and a few others. And I advise a group of startups as well, including startups that use artificial intelligence, such as Housebase and Cinnamon. I started out as an independent video game developer, and my interest in artificial intelligence is not just from all of my research that I did whilst I was at VentureBeat, but in fact, I started out with AI and developed, funnily enough, I developed my first artificially intelligent video game back at the tender age of 12 years old. So I've been doing AI for quite a long time. So that's a little bit of background on me.
So unfortunately, yesterday, I was unable to watch your presentation because we were having an interview, but I remember the title and the abstract of your presentation, and there were a lot of interesting things there. There was artificial intelligence, there was blockchain, and the last thing was bullshit. And my question is, what's going on with this bullshit?
Good question. So we have gone through a lot of different phases with artificial intelligence. We've gone through the theoretical phase, and back in the day, we did not necessarily have the computing power to actually put our theories into practice. So there was a lot of incredible ideas about AI, and of course, that started an entire narrative around what the future might look like with AI, and it kind of culturally embedded the same questions in people's minds, which is things like, will AI take my job away in the future? Which is normally one of the first questions that people ask when they think of artificial intelligence. They think of future and flying cars and robots and all of these things that of course we still don't really have in our homes or in our skies. They think of AI taking over and the singularity and everyone losing their jobs and nobody being able to do anything because the computers take control. And of course, we're in 2020 now and these things still haven't happened. Then there's another layer of bullshit, which is that successively over the last few years, where we do now have the computing power and the data to make artificial intelligence do useful things for us, Silicon Valley startups and startups in other ecosystems have successfully just bandied around the words artificial intelligence whenever talking to investors because they want more money and they want to get as much money as is humanly possible for their startups. But a lot of those startups are bullshit. They do not have actually any AI, or they didn't have any intention. The latest example was kind of hilarious. There was one company that said it was going to be using artificial intelligence for customer service, but the reality is that they used the money to employ 700 people in Southeast Asia to answer the questions, themselves instead of using AI. They just pretended that it was AI so that they could get more money from investors. And this is a worrying trend because it actually puts the entire industry back. It makes people think that AI isn't real, and yet AI is actually in our daily lives. It's in places where we don't necessarily think about it. I gave a bunch of examples in yesterday's speech, such as, of course, things like Netflix and Spotify and several others where AI is being used to deliver personalized recommendations, same with Amazon. Of course, we have our artificially intelligent assistants. The most prevalent of those, and the one that is actually the closest to true AI is Google Assistant, but you also have things like Siri and Alexa, and then we have even AI being used in things like medical applications. It's being used to determine diseases. It's being used to work out from your radiography scans whether you have lung cancer or other things that may be missed or misdiagnosed by a specialist or by a radiographer. Of course, it's being used by the likes of people like Hanson Robotics to power humanoid robots like Sophia. And Sophia is getting better and better all the time and does represent a possible future in terms of robots that might actually be helpful to us. In fact, there's a robot called Pepper, which is one of the most employed robots in the world. It's actually in banks in Japan. You go to a bank, you tell Pepper what service you need, and then Pepper literally says, okay, please follow me, take my hand, and leads you to the right person within the bank who can help you with that particular need. And we're using it in agriculture to help grow perfect lettuces and other vegetables and products for supermarkets, so that we're not putting faulty products into supermarkets. It helps the farmers make more money, it helps the supermarkets make more revenue and have less waste. So artificial intelligence is doing a lot of really useful things for us. But this question of will AI take my job is the wrong question. And there's a very good reason for that.
Okay, so mostly we should think about artificial intelligence as something that could give us some code reduce, something like this.
Well, AI is already a big part of our lives. The question of whether it's going to take our jobs or not is the wrong one. And it depends which generation you are as to whether you're afraid of that or not. If you're part of the older generation, you tend to be afraid of AI and you tend to be afraid of it taking away your livelihood. If you are part of the very young generation, the conversations I've had with kids about artificial intelligence have been quite surprising. They actually want AI to come along and take away all of these jobs because they want to grow up to be more creative and follow their passions. And, we do start to get into this conversation of a universal basic income and AI doing all of the menial jobs, and therefore people being able to live a life where they're enjoying their passions and doing things that they love as opposed to having to work. So for people that are scared that their jobs are going to be replaced, that is not to do with artificial intelligence, and that's why that is the wrong question. Back in the Industrial Revolution, which I know was a long time ago, but back in the Industrial Revolution, machines appeared that could potentially take away people's jobs. Whether those machines took away your jobs or not was not because of the machine, it was because of the people who bought the machine. If you worked for a good boss, somebody that understood that these machines could augment your job and make it easier, then they would buy the machines for that purpose. If you worked for a bad boss, somebody who wanted to just cut their salaries and wages bill, they bought the same machines, but they bought them for the purpose of replacing you. And it's the same with artificial intelligence. If you want to, survive, and if you want to make sure that your job is not replaced by AI, the answer is to find out whether the person buying the AI is doing it to augment your job and make it better, more interesting, easier, or whether they're buying it to replace you. If they're buying it to replace you, that's why you're losing your job. It's not the AI. The AI is just a tool. It's the person who's buying it, the person who's responsible for acquiring that solution, that determines whether you keep your job or not. So that's why this question of artificial intelligence and whether it's going to replace your job or not is absolutely the wrong question, because it's never about the tool, it's about the people who buy the tool.
Okay, and I try to think in this way. And I have a question. Do you think it's some kind of need to educate the people about artificial intelligence and the impact that this new technology is going to have on our life?
I do think that's important. I do think that people need to understand how AI impacts their lives right now. I think it would help to remove a lot of these fears that people have over artificial intelligence. I think there are some individuals out there that like to tell everybody that AI is evil. There are some CEOs in particular that have been very public about the fact that they are saying that we should fear AI and it should be something that we're worried about. And yet it turns out that those same CEOs are the people who are actually investing in and helping to develop AI solutions. So why are they saying that? Well, they're saying that because they want to control the market as much as possible. They would like people to not invest in or get too involved in AI because they want to control the market. If they make it sound like it's a very dangerous thing and then they develop it, they can pretend that they've developed a good AI and they can take the market share. I think we need to educate governments. I think we need to educate regulatory bodies. It was extremely worrying to see in the American Senate when they were doing the Senate hearing with Facebook that they didn't even have the slightest grasp of how the internet and how technology works and how it affects daily lives. Some of the questions they were asking were completely banal and ridiculous. And, you know, we need to educate the people that are governing our countries and setting laws and rules and regulations. We also need to educate ourselves in terms of our own unconscious and conscious biases, because of course AI is nothing without data. And we have had a very sketchy history of putting biased data into our AI algorithms and therefore coming out with biased results. And we need to do a better job of the ethical side of AI and how we actually collect data. Even down to, you know, if you think about the genomic data that we are gathering, we've been gathering genomic data from white people predominantly that have some available money to hand, because we've been selling them things like 23andMe and ancestry kits to find out, you know, what their genetics say about their history and where they came from. Problem with that is that we are missing the genomic data of people in poor countries, people that are from different and diverse backgrounds, from different ethnicities, because they simply can't afford $199 to find out what their heritage is. And yet that's the data that can help us cure all sorts of diseases that we have not yet cured. So we need to do a better job there. And the only way we're going to do a better job there is through education. So I think education is an incredibly important thing right now, but not just to consumers and citizens, but to regulatory bodies, to governments, and to organizations that can help to make sure that we have as unbiased a data set as possible and that we deal with the ethical considerations of AI.
So what's your opinion about the United European way to try to make a regulation on some ethical things for artificial intelligence?
I think any effort to understand AI ethics, any effort to remove biases from data, any effort to make sure that we are regulating how we use artificial intelligence are welcome. I think we have to be careful about regulation versus complete control. If we try to control what is happening, we stand the possibility of stifling innovation, and we need to innovate. We need to make sure that we are, you know, continuing to innovate great solutions that can fix some of the biggest problems in the world. You know, I know we have obviously a big issue right now with the global pandemic, and there are some people who are using artificial intelligence to help understand what is happening with COVID-19 and to come up with solutions to that at a very fast pace. But we have a bigger problem, which is, of course, climate change and the environment in general. We need to make sure that we undo the damage we've done. And there are some amazing startups who are using machine learning and artificial intelligence to better understand how we can create globally scalable solutions for that particular problem. That's a much bigger problem than the pandemic and something that we only have a few years to solve. So I think any effort to make sure that we understand the ethical considerations of AI, to help regulate it in a healthy way so that we don't stifle innovation, are incredibly welcome.
Okay, and what do you think about this race with United States of America and China, where these countries try to build artificial intelligence and want to use it, I think, in their own way? It could be some kind of I don't know, some kind of problem for United European?
Yeah, Europe is an interesting territory. We like to think through the EU that Europe is good at working together. The reality is that each country is still working very much on its own, and that is allowing China and the United States to take the lead. China and the United States have, by far and almost by every measure that you can count, a massive lead in artificial intelligence, whether you count that by academic papers and research, whether you count that by the number of projects. They are way ahead of Europe. And Europe needs to get its act together if it's going to compete. But let's be careful about competition. Competition is an interesting thing. Competition assumes that you need to win, and in order for you to win, everybody else has to lose. That isn't a helpful environment, and especially not for something as life-changing and innovative as artificial intelligence can be. I feel like we need to do a better job of working together, not just in the EU, but globally, because AI has global impact. There are some applications of AI in various territories that do worry me, especially things such as the use of CCTV to identify humans and then identify the other people that they are mixing with, and then limit people's social scores, credit scores, access to particular places based upon who they mix with. Like that's ethically a very bad idea, and is something that is really against freedom and civil liberties. So we have to be very careful about that. We also have to be extremely careful about who has access to this data and how they use it. Of course, we already saw several years ago how AI, machine learning, and access to large amounts of personal data can help to affect the elections within a country. Everybody remembers the story of Cambridge Analytica, and obviously the documentary, the amazing documentary, The Great Hack, which is on Netflix, really is very eye-opening for a lot of people. So we have to be careful about who has access to this very personal information. And I can actually see a future where we will, as human beings, have to potentially evolve solutions that fool camera systems and AI so that we can't be identified. And I don't think that's a very nice future. So we should fix that now, and we should make sure that when it comes to personal information, especially for the next generation, who really are the first generation that may, if they are taught how to, and actually Brittany Kaiser's Own Your Data Foundation is helping to make this a reality. If we teach the next generation how to really own their data, how to have sovereignty over their information, how to only give up the information they want and need to get the kind of services and personalization that they want, but not too much so that they give up their civil liberties. I think that's super important. We need to have those conversations now and make sure that we're ready for that future.
Okay, it was really deep. I have also one question more. Is it possible to combine blockchain and artificial intelligence?
Absolutely, and there are many organizations that are already doing that. Blockchain is interesting because what you have is an immutable record of transactions, and artificial intelligence, of course, is being used in a multitude of applications. By combining the two, you end up with a transparent ledger of what has happened, and by using things like smart contracts, we can actually we can get rid of centralized organizations, and we can get rid of arbitrators, so that we can actually just have systems talk to each other and resolve any issues and problems through smart contracts. That's going to be important. I mean, even if you look at it from a transactional level, let's say, for example, the car of the future, you pull into a station, and either you plug it in or a robot arm plugs it in for you. There should be a conversation happening between the fuel or electric or hydrogen pump and your car, where there are microtransactions happening every time the car is being charged, and they are talking to each other, and there's a smart contract involved, and AI and machine learning are all working in concert to basically have two devices talk to each other, to have things like computer vision identify exactly where the connection point is, or the fuel pump is, how much to fuel it, how much to recharge it, when to disconnect, and then have that take the payment automatically from you, possibly through an existing fiat-based system, or possibly in the future through some kind of cryptocurrency token. There's a lot of different applications for artificial intelligence and blockchain to work seamlessly with each other, but the most important thing, of course, is this transparent ledger, so that there is a very clear understanding of the history of what has happened across all of your devices, all of your interactions, all of the interactions that the AI is making for you, and all of the disputes and resolutions that the smart contracts are affecting. So yeah, AI and blockchain actually work incredibly well together. And but we also need to, just in the same way that AI has been used to get more funding from people, so has blockchain. The blockchain industry, as a result, has got a bit of a tarnished reputation. I feel like we need to stop talking about blockchain per se and just start talking about the solutions. I don't run up to people and say, hey, look at my latest JavaScript technology project, in the same way that somebody says, hey, look at my latest blockchain technology project. What I do instead is to say, hey, look, here's this problem, and I have a product or service that I believe is the solution to that problem. What I am coding in or on should not be part of the conversation. That would help restore the reputation of the industry. Same with AI. We need to not worry too much about focusing on saying, hey, this was built with AI. We need to focus a little bit more on, here's the problem, here's the solution, and here I can show you that it works and that it's more efficient, more cost saving, better for you. It will enrich your life. If we can get to those kinds of conversations without talking about the technology too much, I think that would be healthier for everybody in the industry.
Thank you for these advices. I think we should discuss it in our online journal, and it could be for us also very interesting to check how we are writing about these things. And thank you for your interview. It was very interesting, and I hope we'll meet soon again.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate this. And of course, if you write something up and publish, or wherever this goes out, please let me know. I'll be happy to share it around with my network for you.